may divide the cordoned area into smaller zones as well. And then you can have internal cordons. Okay, so internal cordon, basically the area is divided into smaller zones. Okay, in a cordon count, you may stop a sample of vehicles which are passing through the control station. Okay, any control station from which the people can enter or leave the area. So you take the help of the police, obviously, and nobody would be stopping for you. So you take the help of the police and you set up a control station, and the police will help you in stopping a sample of vehicles from which you can take the data. Okay, and then you can give them the questionnaire which they have to fill, and then you will ask them to return this questionnaire via post. Okay, so they can fill it anytime when they're free, and they will return it to you via post. Okay, and then we have screenline service. Okay, so a screenline means a larger area is divided into two zones. Okay, so if you have a big area and that big area is divided into two zones with the use of a screen line. So a screen line is the line which is dividing the full area into two zones. And if you have a naturally existing screen line, that you can use it. Okay, for example, you have a river. Okay, if you go to Amsterdam or Venice, so there are many cities in the world which are naturally divided by a river. So a river becomes your screen line. Okay, there are some cities which are divided by a motorway. Okay, for example, Sheikh Isa bin Salman Highway, it may be passing through a middle of the city. Okay, so one side of the highway is one zone, the other side is another zone. The reason for choosing these objects as a screen line is that the number of crossing points will be minimized. So if you have a river, so you cannot cross from any point of the river. Okay, I'm talking about vehicles. Okay, obviously if you know swimming, you can cross from any point, but on your vehicle you will cross from a limited number of points. Okay, so a screen line is preferred to be an object which is naturally dividing the area into two zones. Okay, so the procedure for a screen line count is similar to cordon count. You take the help of the police or any authority, you stop some vehicles which are crossing the screen line, and you give them the questionnaire, ask them to return it by post. Okay, and you can also collect data for the external boundary of the area. Okay, you can do a household interview survey as well. You can do a cordon survey as well. Apart from the screen line count, you can do a cordon survey as well. So for the external boundaries of the area. Okay, and this will help you. This will help to reinforce your data. Okay, because we are just stopping, as I mentioned before, a sample of vehicles. Okay, so if there's any mistake in your data collection, this additional data will help you detect that mistake. Okay, so like you can see here, they have done a heavy vehicle survey for origin destination counts, and then they have a screen line data count as well. Okay, and in that count, in both the counts, they were trying to find out how many trips cross the screen line in different times of the day. Okay, so they have two sources of data, and then they are plotting it, and then they are trying to match it. So you can see it's more or less the same trend. The trend is not the same. That means one of these surveys is not accurate, and then you need to go back and do it again. Okay. Okay, in certain cases, you may be required to apply some data corrections. Okay, and mainly what we have been saying again and again, this topic, it could be that the sample is not representative of the whole population. So in that case, you may have to apply some data correction so that the results. So if you say average income, average number of trips, these results are representative of the entire population, and they are accurate and reliable and valid results. Okay, so what type of corrections you can apply? The first type of correction is correction by household size and socio-demographic characteristics. Okay, so these corrections are applied to make sure that the the socio-demographic characteristics. So socio-demographic characteristics are characteristics related to the travelers in the area. Okay, characteristics of the people of the area. Okay, so these characteristics may include size of the household, age, sex or gender, housing type, what type of housing is in the area, vehicle ownership, distribution, how many vehicles per household. Okay, and you can apply the corrections on these characteristics to make sure that the sample data represents the entire population. Okay, so for example, average household size in the sample should be the same as the average household size in the population. Average age of the sample should be the same as the average age of the entire population. Gender distribution, percentage male, percentage female of the sample data is similar to the entire population, and so on and so forth. So in this case, we have to apply an iterative approach. You collect data, you have some statistics, you try to match it. If it doesn't match, you go back and take another trial of the data, and so on and so forth. You can also, the most commonly applied correctional approach for these things is multi-proportion fitting, which we also call as racking ratio. Multi-proportional fitting or racking ratio. This is the approach to apply the corrections for household and demographic and so on. Okay, so in multi-proportional approach, we try to make sure that the total proportion of a particular type of household is the same. Okay, for example, let me show an example here. Okay, so for example, you have characteristics related to income. Okay, and you have characteristics related to household size. Okay, income include, let's say, low income. Okay, let's say less than 1,000 BD. Middle income, 1,000 to 3,000 BD. Okay, I'm not sure if you call it middle income or what, but anyways, high income, 1,000 BD. Okay, and then you have the household with 2 people, 2 to 4 people, and then you have 5 to, let's say, 8 people. 2, 5, and then we have, let's say, 6 to 8. Okay, so you have these, you take the values from the sample, and in the sample, for example, this one is 30, this one is 20, this one is, let's say, 60. Okay, and then, or 30 plus 20, and this one 20. Okay, and then this one is, let's say, 10, this one is 50, this one is 40. Okay, and this one is 0, and this one is 30. Okay, and this one is 70. Okay, so I'll try to make everything 100%. Okay, the complete should be 100%. Okay, so you have the summation of each row and column. Okay, in this case, all of them are 100. Okay, I made them equal to 100. but you know total number of people, or total number of total number of people who belong to household of 2 persons, okay, which is 100 in this case, and this is also 100, and this is also 100, okay, and this one is also 100, this one is also 100, this one is also 100, okay. This is coming from census, maybe the government collected this data and so on and so forth. And the government is telling you that the total number of low income household in the area is 100. Similarly, they are telling you total number of household with 3 to 5 members is also 100, okay. Now you collect your sample, okay, and according to the government, they are saying that they are in equal proportion. This is an important point here, that household of different income categories and household of different household size are same proportion, okay. So in the sample, whatever sample you collect, they should be in the same proportion as well, okay. So the percentage of household with low income should be equal to percentage of household, approximately percentage of household with middle income and percentage of household with high income, okay. Similarly, the percentage of household with 2 people should be the same as 3 to 5 people, and should be the same as 6 to 8 people, okay. Now keep in mind, we are not trying to match each and every number in this matrix. We are just trying to match the final numbers, the final summations, or the final proportions, okay. So it is impossible that you can ensure the same percentage which you see in the matrix for each and every cell, okay, but we can apply the corrections and we can make sure that the total number of each type of household and each income category, total proportion, is the same as the population. This is what we call as multi-fitting approach, okay, multi-proportional method, okay, or racking ratio method. And then some additional corrections for household surveys, correction for non-reported data, okay. Some elements of the survey may not have been answered. For example, people may be concerned about stating their income, okay. So this element may not be answered by many household survey questionnaires, okay. So if you are giving them, so obviously if you are doing an interview survey, so you are asking the question, in that case you have better chance that the item will be answered. But if you have given them a questionnaire and they are supposed to fill the questionnaire themselves, then there is a very high chance that some of the items may not be answered. I think if you look at your data, the data which you collected for your term project, you will find that many questionnaires, many responses are incomplete, okay. So this is a correction for non-reported data, okay. So what we do is, even though the questionnaire is self-completed, but in order to have a representation of the items which are not reported by the people, we do a validation interview survey as well. Okay. So obviously when we do the interview survey, we will make sure that these items are recorded, and then we will try to guess the values of those questions for other people depending upon the interview study, okay. So you have like say income not answered, so you do an interview study separate, additional, and then whatever answers you get from the interview study, you assume that they are the same for certain type of people in my self-completed questionnaire as well, okay. This is how you deal with it. You have to take some extra data. So this is correction for non-reported data. Then we have correction for non-response, okay. Non-reported means you distributed the questionnaire properly, but some of the items were not answered. This is non-reported. Non-response is a certain type of people in the population did not respond to your questionnaire at all, okay. So you have, for example, in your survey data, you may have only responses from males, okay, or if Safa was doing the survey, she may only have responses from females. Okay, so male didn't answer because of the convenience and because who is talking to you and so on and so forth. So there can be certain individuals or households who did not respond to your questionnaire, and by any means. Okay, so if it happens in case of personal interviews, you were asking the questions yourself, but obviously you cannot force anybody to answer to you. If they say we do not want to answer, you just leave them. Okay, so if it happened in interview surveys, okay, then it is recommended that you apply the corrections based on the number of visits necessary to achieve a response. Okay, so when you were calculating the time of the survey, when you were calculating the sample size, you should also take into account that some people may respond to me in more than one visit. Okay, like you have to go after them. Okay, you have to go after them. At certain times they may not be available at home. They are not. They do not have time when you went to do the survey. So you may have to go back at some other time to increase the response rate. Okay, and then you have to take it into account at the time of planning and the time of calculation of the sample size. Okay, so when you say I need 100 samples, 20 of those 100 samples may require more than one visit. So you have to take into account that. If you are doing a self-completion survey, then the same thing can be done easily by sending follow-up reminders. Okay, to increase our response rate, you do follow-up reminders. And I hope you have, I am sure actually that you must have done that in your term project surveys. Okay, you may have send the link, and then you must have sent the reminder and reposted it and tagged people. Okay, so these are all things which you can do to increase the response rate, and some of you have done very well. Okay, if you are doing a continuous survey, I explained it last time as well, means that data was collected in 1 year, and then it was collected next year as well, the same data, and then you use a combined sample from both years, and then you collect data in the 3rd year as well, and then use a combined sample for 3 years, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in that case, household weighting should be done. There should be some weighting mechanism on the basis of household for each important variable. Okay, for example, the size of the household, the car ownership, the household income. Okay, there should be some type of weighting done to make sure that you can integrate the responses from different years into a single data set. Without this weighting mechanism, the integration may not be proper. The first year data may have more samples from bigger households. In second year, you may have more samples from smaller households. So in order to use them together, there must be some weighting done, which I will show you in the next slide. Vehicle weighting can be done as well. You can do weighting on the basis of household size, car ownership, or household income, and you can do it on the basis of vehicle as well, number of vehicles. Okay, and you can give importance to the age of the vehicle. Okay, same household, you do it again, the age of the vehicle has increased, right? But it's the same household. Okay, and then you can do person weighting. Okay, for person weighting, the factors that you can take into account is income, education, and for trip weighting, the most important variable is number of trips per household and the mode choice of the people. So weighting can be done on the basis of that. Weighting basically means proportion. Weighting means proportion. So for example, you are taking 200 responses from year 1 and 200 responses from year 2. Okay, but year 1 responses have a different percentage of household than year 2 responses. Then you multiply year 1 with some weight to make sure that they are in the same proportion, and then you can add them together. Okay, these 200 responses have more large household. These 200 responses, the other 200 responses have less large households. So if you want to combine them, the values will cancel out each other. So to make sure that you can combine them properly, you multiply the first year with a weighting factor so that it becomes the same sample as the second year. Okay, this is what we mean by integration and weighting. Let me show you with an example here. So the following table just trying to open my camera here. Okay, so the table which you see on the slide here, number of samples were gathered in the first 3 years of a continuous. Only see the results from 2 years. Okay, the sample was gathered in 3 years, but third year is planned. We don't have the sample yet for the third year. Okay, so we have the sample for year 1 and 2, and you can see the number of households from which the data was gathered in first year in the first row, and for the second year in the second row. Okay, total number of samples gathered in the first row 15,000. Total gathered in the second year is 5,000. Okay, so total now we have 20,000. Total number of samples which we have is 20,000. Now we want to apply the weighting mechanism on the basis of household size. So our weighting mechanism would be on the basis of household size. Okay, now if you consider that in the first year we have so in the first year the household size of 1 is 2,000. Okay, 2,000. Now 2,000 out of 15,000 means it is 17%. Okay, not 17%, 13.33%. So in the first year, household size 1 was 13.33% of the data. In the second year, it is 17% of the data. Okay, in the first year, this household size was 13% of the data. In the second year, it became 17% of the data. Now, if you just add them together, simple addition, okay, and then calculate the percentage, it will be 14.25%. Okay, but what you are doing is you are taking data from 2 different time zones and then you are adding them together. Okay, so this is what they are saying is that you are mixing totally 2 different species. You are mixing apples with pears. So you shouldn't do that. Okay, data from 2 different years cannot be simply added together without a weighting factor. And how to calculate the weighting factor? The weighting factor will be calculated in this manner. You take the percentage of these household for year 2 divided by the percentage of the same household in year 1. Okay, and then you will get the weighting factor. That weighting factor is 1.275. That weighting factor is 1.275. So values from year 1 must be multiplied by 1.275 before adding it to the values of year 2. Okay, so weighting factor for household size of 1 in year 1 is 1.275, which is the ratio of the percentage of this household size in the consecutive years. Okay, so after applying this weighting factor, now you can add the values and you can simply use them. Okay, so the total will be 17%. Okay, but this 17% is now equally divided by after multiplying with the weighting factor. Both have equal distribution now. Okay, household size of 1, both data sets, year 1 and year 2, after multiplying the year 1 data with the weighting factor, now have equal distribution. Okay, obviously in terms of number it is more, but in terms of distribution it is the same. Okay, same thing will be done for household size of 2. So you will do 24 upon 20, so it will give you 1.2. Then you will do 20 upon 26.67, 0.75, and so on and so forth. So you can see here the weighting factor can be more than 1 or less than 1. It's not fixed, okay, but it should be positive, obviously, and so on. So in the end, the percentage of the complete household in that year will be similar to year 2. Okay, so values from year 1 will be multiplied with the weighting factor. So 2000 into 1.275 will give you 2550. And then you already have 850 values in the second year. If you add them together and calculate the percentage out of total, it will be 17%. Okay, 3,400 divided by 20,000 will be 17% now. Okay, earlier it was 14.25%. If you just simply add them together and then calculate the total out of the calculate the percentage out of total, it was 14%, which is not representative of year 1 or year 2. Okay, but after multiplying with the weighting factor and then if you add them together, then you will get the same percentage for both the years as you got for year 2. Okay, so in this case, what they are saying here is that since there were more households of this size in year 2 data than in terms of percentage, then the households of the same size from year 1 must be increased by the weighting factor so that the combined percentage is same as year 2, because year 2 is the latest one now. Similarly, you can also do the same thing. You can also calculate the weighting factors on the basis of vehicle, number of vehicles, income, and so on and so forth. Okay, then we have the process of imputation. Okay, imputation means that we substitute values for missing data based upon some rules and procedures. Okay, so certain values in the data are missing and we want to obviously use it for analysis. So we want this missing data. So how to calculate these missing values? This is known as imputation. Okay, so they have given an example here. OD survey was conducted in San Diego in 2001. 543 households out of 15,537 did not answer the family income question. So for these 543 households, family income question answer to family income question is missing. So how to incorporate the family income for these 543 households? Okay. So what they did, so they have the income from the remaining of these questionnaires, right? So 15,537 minus 543, the remaining did answer this income question. So from the remaining data, they created a normal distribution. Okay, from the remaining data, they assumed, they plotted the data and they found that the data follows a normal distribution. A normal distribution, we have already covered the Z distribution. Okay, we already covered it. So what they found is if you take the log of income, this is by trial and error. Okay, you can plot the data and find out if maybe without taking the log, the data may follow normal distribution. I think I have said it earlier as well. Usually data collected from any population, if you have enough sample size, follows normal distribution. This is normal. This is the most common case. In case it doesn't, then you can apply such procedures as well. Instead of taking the simple data, you take maybe the square of the data, maybe the exponential of the data, log of the data, but this comes from trial and error. There is no fixed rule here, but normally it should resemble a normal distribution. Okay, so for the normal distribution, they found that it is a T distribution with 5 degrees of freedom. Okay, and they found the outliers, values which were either very high or very low from the data, and they removed it. Okay, they removed the values which were very high or very low. Okay, so the missing values were taken from the distribution of the data. Okay, so for example, when you plotted the data in terms of frequency, repetition of the values, you found something like this. Okay, this is very close to a normal distribution. Okay, So whatever the missing values were, you will take those missing values from this portion of the data, the portion which has higher frequency. Okay, so if we for imputation, what we do is the data which we have, from that data we find out what is its distribution, what type of distribution it looks like, and we have discussed distribution in the last chapter, binomial and normal and geometric. Okay, so first of all, find out your data looks like which distribution, you plot it and you match it with the shape of the distribution, and then from that distribution you fill the missing values from the distribution itself. Okay, so whatever values are missing, you come to the distribution and you calculate those values using the equation of this curve. Each distribution has a equation which we have seen in the last chapter. So for example, your distribution follows, your data follows normal distribution. We have an equation for normal distribution. So missing values will be calculated from the equation of the normal distribution. This is what we call as imputation. Then the data must be validated on these 4 accounts. Whatever data you have collected, it must be validated on the basis of these 4 criteria. Okay, completeness and coherence. The data is complete and it is coherent with each other. Okay, you have covered the entire population without any gaps, simply saying this. Okay, simple meaning of the first criteria is that you have collected data from the entire population, not of the entire population, but from each and every segment of the entire population, and it is without any gap. Okay, so you collected data from very old people. Okay, and then you did not collect any value for people between 40 and 50, and then you came to the young people. This is not coherent. This is incoherent. Okay, so coherence means that there is no gap in the data. Okay, all types of people are part of the data and without any gap. Okay, so how do we do that? So I have, for example, an area. Before I start the data collection, I will divide this area into zones and I will do coding for each zone. Okay, so let's say this is zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Okay, and then when you are collecting the data, you make sure that you have some values from each zone. Okay, so you have already coded and digitized the data, or coded and digitized the area, and then on the basis of your coding, you make sure that you are collecting data from each part of the area. Okay, so this is completeness and coherence. Then computation of check of valid ranges and consistency. Okay, so for example, you collected data and somebody wrote my income is 100,000 BD. Okay, is this a practical value? Tell me, is this a value, practical value? I don't know about job market here, but according to my income, I cannot reach this level in 100 years. Okay, 1,000 BD. Oh, not sorry, 100,000 BD. Is it a valid range? Is it a good value? Like, is it a practical value? Tell me. Huh? Somebody wrote 100,000 BD in your survey. Would you be surprised or you would just take it as normal? Tell me.
No, I will exclude it.
Yeah, 100,000 BD I think is not possible for a person who's answering my survey, right? He would have better things to do in his life. Okay, so valid ranges and consistency. Okay, this is what we mean, that outliers, values which are impractical, people may have written it by mistake. They may not be paying attention while they were writing those values, or they were just joking around with you. Okay, because of any reason you find some invalid values, you cross them out. Okay, validation by using secondary data like screen line count or quadrant count. So you have calculated number of trips of the area, and then you check if this number of trips is actually conforming to the count which you have taken on the boundary of the area. So your data shows that 100,000 trips are generated from this area. But when you counted the number of vehicles which are going out of the area, there are only 10,000. So that means there's a problem. So you can check the data using any secondary source. Okay, and can be government data which is already collected, okay, by the government. It may have been collected by you in some other project in some previous year. Okay, so these are the secondary sources, secondary data. So check using some secondary sources, additional sources, and then independence of the data. Data is collected independently, without any bias, without any preference. Okay, without any preference, and the data is not interrelated to each other. Okay, so for example, you collected data about income and number of cars in the house, and these two are interrelated. Whoever said my income is 2000 BD, he has 2 cars in the house. So the data is not independent. This is dependent upon each other. 2 values are dependent upon each other. Okay, you should have only collected 1 value, and this would have sufficed. Okay, longitudinal data collection. What we have discussed up till now is called as cross-sectional data. Whatever discussion we have done up till now, okay, that data is known as cross-sectional data. I will come back to it in the next topic as well. Cross-sectional data. Okay, so cross-sectional data means data collected at one point of time. Okay, so somebody gave you a task, collect data today or this year, and you collected the data for the entire population. This is cross-sectional data. Now, if I tell you repeat the same data collection after every few days or after every month, this is longitudinal data collection. Okay, so in longitudinal data collection, you will see the effect of time on the behavior of the people. So you have data for summer, then for winter, then for spring and fall and whatever. So you see how the data is changing with respect to different seasons. Okay, and similarly you can see the effect of inflation as well. You have data for 1 year, then 2nd year, the 3rd year, 4th year, same people, same population, same sample size, everything is same. And then you see the effect of inflation on people attributes. Okay, so this is what we call as temporal effects. Okay, temporal means the effect of time, things which are changing with respect to time. And the data, one name is longitudinal data, another name given to that is time series data. Time series. Okay, data collected multiple times, same data collected multiple times. Time series data on longitudinal data. It can be of 2 types: repeated cross-sectional survey or panel survey. Okay, so in repeated cross-sectional survey, whatever we have discussed up till now, we do it from an equivalent population at different points in time. So 1 month, 2nd month, 3rd month, and so on, or 1 year, 2nd year, 3rd year, and so on. Okay, same thing, same methodology, same number of samples, and same type of population. Okay, and this is without ensuring that any respondent is included more than once or not. Maybe you have asked different people in the 1st month and different people in the 2nd month, but the composition of the sample and the type of population is the same. So this is repeated cross-section, and this is the type of longitudinal data. Okay, so it will provide the snapshot of the travel behavior at different points of time. Okay, then we have panel survey. Panel survey means that similar measurements are made on the same sample, same people. Panel means a group of individuals which you will ask again and again. Okay, so 1st year ask the same person, 2nd year same question, same person. Okay, this is a panel survey. So in repeated cross-sectional, people can be different. Panel survey, people are same. Panel survey can be rotating panel, split panel, okay, or it can be a cohort study. Okay, a rotating panel means that some elements are kept constant and then some are rotating. Okay, some elements are the same. Okay. For example, you keep if you have a panel of 10, out of 10, you keep 5 and 6 same for the first 2 or 3 surveys, and then after that you change those 5 or 6 people, but the remaining are still the same. This is a rotating panel. Okay, so you change a part of the panel, but from that part you take some repeated measurements and then you change that and you keep others same. Okay, so at one point of time you have some portion of the people which are the same as the previous survey. Okay, and then you have a split panel, which is the combination of panel and rotating panel. Okay, so a panel survey means the same people, and rotating panel means people are changed after a particular time. So you combine both of them, it becomes a split panel. So the portion of the panel which will be rotated is, already know that which people will be rotated next time. This is split panel. Okay, and then we have a cohort study, which is also a panel-based survey. Elements from population subgroups that have shared similar experience. Cohort. Okay, so cohort meaning the panel consists of a group which has something in common between them. For example, they have mentioned that people belonging to the same age. So the entire panel is made up of people which have the same age. This is the cohort study. Okay, so in the cohort study, the panel have something in common. The people in the panel have something in common. Okay, so we have repeated cross section where each time you may ask different people the same questions. Then we have panel, which means same people, same questions. Then we have rotating panel, which means people will be kept constant for some duration of the survey. After that, he will change. And then we have a split panel in which the part of the panel which is changed is fixed, and the part of the panel which will change is also fixed. Okay, so every time you will change 4 people and the remaining 6 will be fixed. So this is split panel, and then we have cohort, which means the panel consists of people which have something in common between them. Okay, then we can have the panels can be long survey panels and they can be short survey panels. Okay, this is type of panel study. Any type of panel study can be long survey or short survey. Okay, long survey means repeating the same survey with the same whatever type of panel you are using, split or rotating or whatever type of panel you are using at separate times. For example, once in a year or twice in a year. Okay, and you will do it for a number of years. So for example, I say I will do a survey. Okay, for 5 years, and every year I will ask the same people the same question, or the same panel the same question once a year. This is long survey panel. Short survey means and long survey panel is basically used for before and after study. Okay, so before, for example, number of trips, before let's say introduction of metro, and then after introduction of metro. So long survey panels are good and efficient in finding out the effects of different events on the people's travel behavior. For example, introduction of a metro. Then short survey means that they are conducted for multiple days. Okay, and on the same sample, on the same, we know the definition of panel, over a continuous period of time. Okay, and you can do it for the same panel in the subsequent years as well, in the following years as well, but it is not necessary. Okay, so long survey panel means the panel is surveyed for number of years. Okay, and each year you may be asking them, or you may be doing their survey once or twice. Short survey panels, you are doing it within days. So you ask them today, and tomorrow, then day after tomorrow, and so on. So maybe 5 days of the week and your panel survey is over. Okay, so short means the frequency is on daily basis. In long survey, the frequency is yearly basis. Okay. In short survey, it can be, you can repeat it next year, but one short panel survey finishes within some days. Okay, in panel data, the errors can be these. We can have effects on response error. In case of short survey panels, the problem is people get bored. Okay, why is he coming to me and asking the same question? He already knows the answer. He knows about me. Okay, what will change from yesterday that I will answer today? Okay, so why should I answer this question? He can already fill it out and solve. Okay, so people start to get bored and their response rate goes lower, and sometimes they are, bored, or they are, not in a mood to answer the same question again and again. You can understand. If I keep on asking you the same question every day, you will be bored. Okay, so your response rate can go lower with every passing day. Okay, non-response issues, people who stop responding at all. So the third day or the next year you go, that person says, I will not now participate in the survey. What can we do? Response contamination. Okay, so one wave of response. One wave means one exercise of panel survey, one set of data collection, one effort of data collection. This is known as one wave. Okay, so wave means data collected one time. Okay, for the entire panel. This is a panel wave. So they are saying that in the initial wave, whatever responses are, they tend to change in the subsequent waves. So the same person to the same questions may give a different answer next year or next time. Okay, and this is the reason that sometimes they take out the initial responses from the survey. They take it out. Okay, they will not use it. So they will start using the responses from the second and the third and the fourth wave onwards. Okay, because initial responses, they say maybe people didn't know what we were trying to ask. They didn't know that the survey will continue. They didn't know us. We didn't know them. So because of that, we became more efficient. They become more knowledgeable about our survey. They know why we are doing the survey. They know we are committed. So from the second time onwards, they become more responsive and more open. So they say, why don't we just discard the first wave and we don't use it for any comparison? You can still use the data, but you do not compare it between one wave and the other wave, between one first wave and the second wave. Okay, comparison should not be done with the first wave of panel survey. Okay, treatment of repeated response. This is another source of the error. Okay, and it deals with the optimum length of the short survey panel. Short survey means how many days? Okay, so in what way you will be using the repeated information, the information which you are asking again and again. How are we going to use it? Okay, so if the length of the short survey panel is sufficient, then some of the responses may not be required. For example, you are only doing the survey for 5 weekdays. There are no weekends. Okay, so every time if you ask them on which vehicle did you go from your house to your work, it will become useless. This repeated information is useless. Same person, same week, going to the same place. Why will we give a different answer? Okay, but if you, for example, you're saying that some waves are done, some efforts of the survey collection has been done on weekdays, some has been done in weekends, then you may get a different answer. Okay, so treatment of repeated responses is related to the length of the survey. Okay, so choose the length of the survey, and according to that, choose which information should be repeated, should be asked repetitively. Okay, which information is supposed to change from one day to the other day. Okay, otherwise, if it is not supposed to change, just ask it for once and then it's the same. Okay. Travel time survey. Okay, travel time surveys are used for calibration and validation of the model and systems. So you already have an equation which are giving you number of trips going from one zone to the other zone. Now we know number of trips depend upon travel time. Okay, so there are equations available in which you can use travel time to find out if the number of trips given by the equation is valid or not. For example, somebody says I go from zone A to zone B, or number of trips from zone A to zone B is 10,000, and its travel time is very high. It's 2 hours, for example. We have another zone, and its number of trips from zone A is, let's say, 1,000, according to the model, according to the equation, and the travel time between them is 30 minutes. Doesn't make sense, right? 2 hours, more trips, 30 minutes, less trips, doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you can go and check your data and you can calibrate it according to travel time. Okay, travel time is also important parameter for calculating travel cost. Okay, because travel cost depends upon the time you are consuming on the route. Okay, so there are models and there are factors available by which you can convert time into cost. Okay, we call it value of time. The factors, those factors are known as value of time. Okay, so and they are dependent upon obviously delays and so on. Travel time is dependent upon delays and so on. Okay, so when you know the travel time, then you know which parts of the network will have more cost than the other parts. Okay, depending on the time. Travel time can be divided into two parts: running time and delays. Running time is the time during which the vehicle was moving, and delay when the vehicle was. It can be because of congestion. It can be because of a traffic device, traffic control device. For example, a signal, a stop sign, or something like that. Okay. Travel time can vary a lot for the same road, for the same segment. Travel time can have a lot of variation because of traffic control measures and because of congestion. Okay, so for example, if you are using a signal, then variation in travel time is less as compared to using a roundabout. Okay, because a roundabout people are going at their own will, but on a signal the timings are fixed, so variation will be less. And then again, on the basis of congestion, on the basis of traffic flow, so if there's more variation in traffic flow, there will be variation in travel time as well. And I think this is understandable. For strategic models, okay, strategic meaning models which are covering a very large area. Models which are covering a very large area, they're calling them as strategic models. Okay, so then they are saying you should take travel time of at least 5 links, or of at least one segment which is 1 kilometer long. Don't take travel time, or don't make segments for travel time observation less than 1 kilometer. Okay, at least it should be 5 links, meaning 5 you can say 5 segments together, or 1 kilometer. Okay, I think 5 they are saying whatever is longer. So obviously 5 links will be longer than 1 kilometer, right? So they are saying take travel time for at least 5 links together for a strategic model, because now you are dealing with the entire network. Okay, for smaller scale models, if you are just calculating travel time for one highway or one segment or one area, then you can use shorter segments as well. But in order to make a reliable estimate, take travel time observation more than once. Okay, and this is true for the first model as well, even for the entire network. But in the entire network, since you are dealing with so many highways and roads, so all roads and highways may not be observed same number of times. But if you are dealing with a very short network, very short study, or a smaller scale model, then make sure that whatever segments you have, you take travel time repetitively for that segment to have a reliable estimate. Reliability for each segment is not so important for strategic models. For each segment, okay? Overall reliability for the entire network is important, but if you just try to focus on each segment, that on each segment I will take 10 observations, it will take you years to complete the entire survey. So that's why they are saying, if you are dealing with the entire area, don't focus unnecessarily on each and every segment. Okay, for travel time observation, we use a method which is known as moving observer method. In undergraduate course, I called it the test car technique. Means the same thing. Test car, moving observer method means the same thing. A probe car, probe meaning an observation car, is driven at the average speed, whatever the average speed of the traffic is, and then you record the time of that car moving from one end to the other end. And you try to maintain the average speed and the normal, under normal conditions. So to maintain average speed, we make sure that we overtake the same number of vehicles that have overtaken us. Okay, and again, number doesn't mean that you should overtake the same driver. Okay, find another guy who is lazier than you and you can overtake him easily. You don't have to chase a driver to his house. And how dare he overtook me, and now I will go after him until I overtake him, even if it's in his parking garage. Okay, it's not like that. Same number of cars. So one driver overtook you, he was going at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour, let him go. You find another driver who is going slow and you overtake that driver, and this will be considered as an average or normal condition for you. Okay, if you are doing that, if you are maintaining your position, okay, then like the number of cars which have overtaken you, you have overtaken the same number of cars. That means that your speed will be considered as average speed of the traffic. Okay, so at that time, so you have a driver in the car, in the probe car, you have a driver, and then you have an observer, and the observer is recording the time. Okay, at what time it reached point 1, at what time it reached point 2, for how much time it was stopped, and so on and so forth. Okay, and so they are calling that those points as identifiable locations within your segments. You mark identifiable locations, signals, roundabouts, important buildings. So the observer will record the time at which you cross those junctions, your locations, and you have a GPS in the car as well, which is recording the distance and so on. Okay, let us take a 15 minutes break for the prayers, and I will meet you after the break. Okay, so 5:35 inshallah. Let's pray.